Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning.
I got a buzz. Do you have that buzz?
I got a buzz. Do you have that buzz? I got a buzz. Do you have that buzz?
It may be feedback. Let me turn that off and see if that helps. Hey, Tina. Good morning. No buzz for you? Good. Not even Buzz Lightyear? I think Buzz hit the screens last night after midnight. I think. Brenda and I looked, I think, before midnight. I'll explain it later. I'll explain the blarney. I just wanted something that was very Irish for a month, for part of the theme. Oh, let's not go there. Okay. I shall not go there. I have a squirrel out here hanging straight down from his hind legs on a feeder, just stuffing his face. How does food go up? Ian is running late today. Okay. So who are we speaking with? Is this the late Ian or oh, that didn't sound right. Is this Ian running late or is this someone else speaking for Ian? Excuse me. Sometimes you talk in the third person. Be careful about that. That can get you in trouble. You don't refer to yourself as the Ian, though, right? How's your weather today, Ian? Did you get any rain? I know some places north of you got rain. And Tina, how about yours today? I heard your part of the country might be fairly pleasant the next couple of days, temperature wise. I got you, Ian. Well, that's okay. That's the best way to do it if you're if you're gonna do it. I'm not sure why I do it. Sometimes I think I do it to disassociate. No rain, it's been hot. You probably don't get the temperature changes that Mark does. I mean, I know he's further north, but I mean, if you just measured due north to a line where he is and where you are latitudinally, I wonder how much difference there is. I mean, I know there's some, but altitude wise, though, I bet it's significant. Although you're probably a mile high too, aren't you, Ian? Don't know, but it's cold today. Well, that's what I mean. That I wish it was. If I say cold, I'm not sure what that means in relative terms, but I wish it was much cooler here. It's been very hot. Yesterday, my wife can speak to this. She got out. I think it was yesterday. Maybe it's the day before yesterday, and got overheated and got sick and had to come in and get out of the heat for a while. Much over 65. Wow. I don't know if we'll see 65 again till October. And we're in that time of year and phase when it's hot and cold, hot and cold. I mean, not hot and cold, hot and cold. I'm sorry. Hot all day and then thunderstorms in the evening is what I meant to say. Don't know why I said hot and cold, hot and cold. But, it all builds up during the day. All the clouds build all day, and then somewhere between, I'm gonna stretch it out and say between 4 and 7, because it does seem to happen a lot during rush hour. Yeah, it does make a big difference then. Oh, Diana, good morning. Now we've heard from the whole world. How's Canada this morning? Mark is supposed to be here today. I hope he makes it in. He had a whole tribe of wild young girls at his house last night. Yes, it is, Tina. Yes, it is. Ian, you tell her, Ian. Maybe she'll bring some home for you. I've been craving it too, but I love ice cream. Brenda, she's kind of so on ice cream, so she doesn't usually buy it from me either, which somehow doesn't seem entirely fair. But that's another topic too, isn't it? Wild young granddaughters. Yep, he did. Oh, I used to make my own too, Tina. I've made some pretty good ice cream in my life, and I like to do that too. We got somebody bought us a little ice cream maker one time. It's made specifically just to work in your house. Not, and I say that because I grew up using the kind that you go outside and crank or run with a motor until they're done, and they leak water everywhere and all that as the ice melts. But this one is designed just to use like ice tray ice or ice maker ice out of your refrigerator, and it doesn't take a whole lot, and it makes really good ice cream. I should start doing that again. Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot cheaper, especially these days. But I mean, time you buy the the heavy cream and that kind of stuff that you need to make ice cream with, it was, at least that's what I usually use. I think I don't remember my. Well, I was going to get some for. Oh, well, you were. Hi, Carol. I see Carol's picked up on a theme. Tina may be out chasing those dogs right now. How's Carol today? How's Michigan? Yeah, I was on the phone last night with Mark, and I'll tell this before he gets here in case if he does show up, I'll tell it now so I don't get in trouble later. He might not want me telling everybody. But he's standing there on the phone, and I heard all of a sudden, well, I heard noise in the background. He said, "Can you hear all that screaming and going on?" He said, three granddaughters in the tub, rub dub dub. And he said they're just in there going nuts. He said 2 hours ago they were fighting over something. He said now they're best friends again, and they're, he said one yelled for a dinosaur and one yelled for something else. And anyway, they were all in the tub. And then after I'd talked to him for a little while, the screaming got closer, and he said, "Holy cow, what's going on here?" And he said 2 naked ones ran past him towards the bedroom, and the third one did come out with a towel wrapped around her, but she's a little bit older. She's 8 or 9. The others are little. And they all went running. He said the problem was they were all soaking wet. And I said, I bet they went and jumped on top of Grandpa's bed. That's how they'll get dried off. Just roll around on your bed. Which one is yours in particular, Carol? The Scottish flag or the Irish flag? I do have my Ukrainian flag up also. I changed my flags now. Actually, you can't see them all, but I've got my Welsh flag, my Scottish flag, my Irish flag, and I do have the Ukrainian flag still flying. And there's a theme to that. I'm not going to say yet. Let's see if you can figure it out. The Scotland flag. Well, I wonder why that is, Carol. We should get that fixed. I don't even know if I can. How can I do that? I can do that, I think. I remember a couple years ago, people were complaining about, flags. And in particular, they were complaining because the American flag wasn't on there. But I have seen the American flag. I don't know if they put it back on there or if it's still off in maybe it's on some chat boxes and it's not on others. Like maybe it's on my phone, but not on here. I can't even find the flags now. The only flags I saw were pirate flags and pride flags and something else. Yeah, well, since Ian's proved it, I'm not gonna have to. I don't think. Well, I wanted to see if it turned black on my screen versus what we're seeing, what you see on the other end. But since I can't even find it, I won't be able to do that. Okay, what did Ian ask for? Could you get me some? And if Tim eats it before I get there, that's okay. Ian, if that's the case, oh, Ian, you're a man after my own heart. I love mint chocolate chip. That's always been my favorite. I think that's always been my true favorite. I do like a good vanilla sometimes too. I'll eat chocolate. Never was a huge chocolate ice cream fan. That wasn't the first thing I ever grabbed for. I like it if it's swirled in with vanilla. Uh-oh, Carol. Tina's husband's looking for you. That might not be good. You want me to ask what for so you can pretend like you're not here? Look after each other. And that's America Works. That sounds like a commercial. America Works. Buy bonds or something. It sounds like it, Ian. It does. I mean, I do like other things, but if I walk into an ice cream parlor, it's very rare for me not to order mint chip ice cream. And I'm not that crazy about just chocolate chip ice cream. I mean, it's got to be mint. Oh, did Chuck find his keys? I missed that. God, I'm slipping, folks. I didn't pick up on that at all. Ian, much like the rest of us, is having a few problems with his letter finger coordination today. I have that problem a lot. Oh, it just shows up as us, not the flag. Huh. Oh, Tina. Now I hear. Well, okay, they're in his own pocket, but was his own pocket on his person, or was it like a pocket in the laundry? Because men never go close to the laundry, so he never would have found it there. That's a rule. Although I must admit that it's not one that's in this house. My nose is itching. Does that mean I'm telling a fib? Tina, men also we don't have the finder's gene. You guys have women have a finder's gene. Oh, he was wearing them. Well, that does make it a little bit worse, Tina. I can't make too many excuses for him then. Although one could say, well, that's the last place you'd ever look, and that might, get him out of the weeds a little bit. Yeah, and I think Carol, Diana, don't you hate that? I mean, I hate looking for something that's in my own hand or something. I've done that. That's not just old age catching up, though. I think I used to do that when I was younger too, from time to time. Like holler at somebody at work, hand me that little small hammer over there, and they'd say it's in your hand. And of course, if you're sharp on your feet, you say, no, not this one, that other one. Well, he did ask me if I had them, and I said, aren't they in your pocket? And he checked, and there they were. And see, and you guys take such great pleasure in that too. Don't tell me you don't. And I'm dragging my feet a little bit, guys. I'm waiting to see if Mark makes it. He said he thought he'd be here, but it was possible that something might come up. Like I said, he's got grandkids, so he may be trying to herd them into. He said they had to go this morning. They were headed out to, I guess, Kimmer. Anyway, they had to go to a parade, and then they were going to dance classes. And then something else after that, because he has to go to attend the latter part. I'm forever looking for my glasses, even though I have 14 pair in the house. Oh, my word, Tina. How do you keep up with 14 pair? I have trouble keeping up with one or two. I do try to keep at least one pair of spares, but 14, I don't know what I'd do. Oh, that's okay, Ian. I have trouble spelling about every day. I tell people it's not really my spelling, it's my typing, but it's probably a combination of both. Good morning, Dean. You're at Wendy's picking up my check, but watching a few minutes. Oh, so wait a minute, you're at Wendy's, but you're watching. Okay, cool. Wow, you know what, Dean? I'm gonna say something for you. For me, that's a novel thing. I can't remember the last time I had to go pick up my check. My checks have been direct deposited for so long. I'm not sure when the last time was I had to actually pick up a check. It's been a while. Glad you could join us, though. A few guys that watched Dean's Instagram page, but he posted another. What's that guy? Indian River or whatever community center billboard out in front of the. It was really good this morning about dinosaurs. We changed payroll companies recently, and I've been lazy and not set up direct deposit. Oh, okay. Whew, making me feel better. I thought if Wendy's was still riding that train, they were behind times. It's been over. There was a gap, but it's probably been at least 30 years since I picked up a check. And maybe because all the time I worked for the federal government, it was they sent it, that was a direct deposit, and that was 20 years. Oh, Ian, I can tell you they are. I've had one on Dean's recommendation, I think. I like them on the bun, the softer bun, not the more than the biscuit. Biscuit's okay too, but I really like them on the. I think it's a bun. If that's the one I'm thinking of. What's it? Has it got sausage and bacon on it and an egg? Because that's what I'm thinking about. Maybe I'm not right. Whatever I had there was good. I don't get out as much to buy breakfast anymore, but for a while there, I probably did that too much. On a croissant. I don't know if I've tried their croissants. I'll have to do that, Dean. I don't know. Again, in case you guys don't follow Dean's Instagram, he's celebrating an anniversary there too. He has worked for Wendy's now for 18 years, and I don't care who you are. That's an accomplishment to work anywhere 18 years these days. Galveston, you don't live in Galveston. What you doing in Galveston? Going to the beach? Well, I forgot to add. Howdy, Don. You are on a trip. I mean, I guess. That's probably way more obvious than I'm making it out to be. Oh, you live there for this week? Okay, cool. Is it any cooler down there or is it hotter, Don? You guys have had some, I believe you guys have had some scorching temperatures. We've been in the plus 100 feels like range most of this week, but I think you guys have been probably higher on actual temperature. 88 degrees. Well, we're at 80. We may not. I'd say you guys will beat us today. Although it'd probably still be pretty miserable up here, too. At least you might have an ocean breeze. I say might because I'm not sure. Or a Gulf breeze, whatever. Hopefully you do, so it helps. Well, I'm waited 30 minutes. I think I'm going to get started. And if Mark does get to show up, he'll be here in a little bit. Let me see if he sent me anything. Nothing up my sleeve. No, oh, wait a minute. Okay. Well, he's still saying he was going to. Last note I got said he'd be here, but he had to leave by 11 o'clock his time, which is even I'm done by that time. So I'm thinking something's probably holding him up. So if he comes in, he can join right in. Oops, wrong. Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. Oops, wrong hat. Okay. You guys can't see that yet, but I'm going. Well, actually, why don't I go ahead and do it? I'm going to talk a little bit about invasive species today. Now, I know I've talked about that off and on in the past, or bits and pieces when we've had another topic, or when I've talked with somebody else about things. But I thought I'd. Oh, Dean, yeah, we've been talking. Ian and I both need some ice cream. We both like mint chip, so preferably a decent level brand. Maybe not the bottom of the line, but then again, I'm not that picky. Man, we used to have Kroger's used to sell a private selection mint chip that was made with the mint. I believe is mostly, in this case, the mint was mostly in the chocolate, and it was in a sweet cream. They called it a sweet cream chocolate chip mint. Man, was that good. That was the best ice cream. And then they quit selling it. At least they did here. Oh, you can't ever have too much, Ian. But I won't speak for you anymore. I'll just, speak for myself. I'll take the extra. Oh, Dean, you're in good company then, buddy. At least 3 of us. So anyway, I was going to talk a little bit more about not endangered species, although some of these species have put other species in danger. But just invasive species in general, and I'm only going to highlight a few that are probably what some people would call megafauna, or the ones you hear about because they're the most, because there's a lot more out there on the list. If you're at all interested, I highly recommend you look up invasive or invasive species, or they have another fancy word for it, but it means the same thing. Maybe it'll pop up in my head. So anyway, I'll go over these and then we can talk about them. Hey, Dave. Need some coffee? Well, I got a jug here. Stick your cup through and I'll pour you some while I've got it left anyway. Well, Brenda likes strawberry. That's the one ice cream she does like, Dean. And I didn't include plants in this, and that could be a whole nother, that could be another all day sucker. I mean, there's far more plants that are considered invasive than there are animal species, although there's a lot when you include insects and reptiles and mammals and just the whole, and invertebrates, and there's a lot. And they really do a lot of damage, and they, in some ways, they pose a lot of threats to the American people in general. And some might attack crops and affect farmers, or the timber lumber industry, or just our national parks. I've got a picture of a sad picture of the Great Smokies Mountain National Park, where an invasive species is hit. And in fact, they're probably getting it even worse now because of another one. And those kind of critters don't, they don't stop at a border because it's a national park or protected biome or something like that. They're gonna come on in and do their damage. And it's also even harder to stop them in places like that because you got to be so careful not to damage other parts of the environment. All right, Dean, thanks for stopping in, buddy. Have a good day. So anyway, on that note, and that picture on the right lower right there is a big wad of zebra mussels, and they're going to be one of the well, not the first things I talk about, but we are going to talk about them soon. And I bet some of you have these. If you haven't, I bet you've seen them. And at first, I just thought they were, regular old ladybugs. But well, tell him we're talking about invasive species in North America, things that have showed up that don't belong here, and at least some of the damages they cause or issues. And these little fellas, while they look kind of innocent, since they look like our own ladybug that we have or beetle that we have in this country, that they're not quite the same critter. And as you can see, there's a lot of kind of different color and spot variations. Some of them look more like American ladybugs or whatever they're called, and some less. I should have put a picture up here of a native ladybug, and I didn't do that. I should have done that. Look at those 2 or 3 down in the bottom, those black and red ones. Those look scary. I mean, that reminds me of a black widow spider or something. Tina, well, ain't no need to lie about it at this point. You remember the Asian beetles were really bad several years back. Yeah, Carol, they were, and they still are in some places. I don't know why they might have changed in some areas versus others. And these ladybugs are primarily an example of an invasive species we brought in. Tina, is your husband an endangered species? He may be if he don't mind his P's and Q's. Yeah, well, these ladybugs are not ladybugs. They were brought in to help. Well, here's an example of a critter that was brought in with good intentions, but then hung around and it's caused their own problems. Not as serious as some others, but still a problem. These guys were brought in to fight off exotic aphids, aphids that are killing other species, be they agricultural products or timber products or whatever. And ladybugs eat aphids. I've seen them release ladybugs at Disney World, and I never thought about whether they were these or not, and they may very well have been. And it's been an accepted practice in most states. I'm going to assume that it was not be legal for federal agencies to give these out, to hand out and spread around, because when I worked for the feds, that we weren't supposed to introduce exotic species on, at least not on federal property. I don't know whether they can give these for people to use on their own property or not. But they do eat a lot of aphids, and they may be more, so far, they may be doing as much good as they are harm. Now, they may eventually displace our native ladybugs. I don't know, and that would be bad. Everything here has a place, so if they're doing something else, then if they're displacing our own, then that's a bad thing. And yes, they eat aphids. They're on the Epcot ride. Which Epcot ride is that, Tina? On the Living with the Land, maybe? Because I know they talk about them there, and we've seen them release them at. I think we saw, Brenda. You're welcome to speak up here. We saw them released in maybe in Epcot, but I was thinking at the hotel, or at a hotel there, or maybe a couple of hotels, and they eat aphids off of everything like roses have a lot of aphid issues, I think. Other flower species do. So in that regard, they probably do about as much good as not. These are the kind of thing you figure out over long term whether or not they were really, it's worth it or not. Gee, Tina, that's a tough question, because these guys were brought here for a good purpose, and from the literature I've read, they're still mostly doing for a good purpose. But long term, I don't know. So, and then it's hard for me to look at them. Now, I will say this, there have been some species brought in a couple of times to use on an invasive species, and that's the only species that the predator fed upon. So when all the bad bugs were dead, then they should have all disappeared. Now, once you let them bugs out of a box, they don't come back to let you know the job's done. So, that's still questionable, but they have done that. But a lot of people would tell, in my business, or a lot of people in natural resource business in the zoological business would say that reintroducing a species to take care of another species usually doesn't work out, or is not overall a good thing. So, I'd have to kind of say no, but I mean, introduced species, whether accidentally or on purpose, that's what killed off all the chestnut trees in this country. Elm blight came from overseas. I mean, you don't introduce any kind of species into any country really without it having an effect. In Australia, they invited what seemed the innocent little bunny rabbit, and it almost destroyed at least parts of the continent. I mean, they multiplied so fast because there was no natural enemies, and they darn near ate all the vegetation everywhere that they could get to it, and they had to really work hard to cut those numbers back. Well, yeah, and the dingo you're right, Ian. The dingo was introduced to Australia, but it's been there. I've read some stuff that thinks the dingo may have come over with Polynesians, a few hundred years ago. So they've been there longer than Europeans have. I've got some pictures of some other species in a minute. Like I said, I didn't get them all, and I didn't go around the world looking for different ones because I knew I wouldn't get through all these. So, but anyway, this one most of you have seen. Now, here's one of the issues with them. I don't know if it's the next slide or the following. Okay, this is one of the pictures. Now, this is the left-hand side is the life stages of the ladybugs, the Asian ladybug or the Asian ladybird. Some people, it originally was called the ladybird beetle. I'm not sure why. Maybe that was to help distinguish it from our ladybugs. But now most everybody just calls them ladybugs, Asian ladybugs. But that's the life process they go through from egg, well, actually mating to eggs to pupae larvae, and then pupae, and then into the hard shell beetle bug that they are. Now, some of you probably had the problem on the right. If you haven't, you're welcome to come down south. We've had this problem, or not. We haven't had it so much right here, but I used to work in a trailer, sort of my office for a while when I was still doing contract work for TVA, and that trailer was full of these guys. They get up in attics in winter. They huddle up like this to retain heat, and you see them in your windowsills and up in the corners of your attic. Now, as far as I know, they're not hurting anything, but you never know. You could be allergic to some critter that's on them, or okay, Carol, let's put something clear right off the bat. I forgot that permission slips again, but I'm trying to deal with adults. I'm hoping. Well, no, you know what? I'm going to take that back. Maybe that's not true. If we've got some youngsters in here to educate, that'd be fine too. But anyway, you might see these guys up in the corner of your roof joist, or even in just a corner of a room, and they huddle up like that starting about October, November. When cold weather sets in, so it depends on where you're at. And here's one of my favorite, one of the bugs I love to hate, is the emerald ash borer. Yes, they do, Ian. They certainly do. And now I'm reading that in some places the infestations are actually decreasing. So who knows? Maybe they're doing their best to keep up with the aphids they eat, and they're not doing as well as they used to. So we'll see in time, I guess, how they hold up. This guy, on the other hand, is also from I'm going to say Western Asia, but I guess if you live in Asia, it'd be Eastern Asia, along that side of the coast. I actually have maps for most of these guys, but I didn't put them all in here because I didn't have time to write in all the details, and I knew I couldn't remember them all. But these guys have literally destroyed, or are working on destroying, the native not aspens, ash trees in this country. And I've seen there's places out here. We had one right here in our backyard that they got, and they kill pretty quick. But if you go out in the lake, or drive along the shores of the lakes around here where you can see the difference, you see a lot of dead ash. Almost everything you see out there, not everything, but almost everything you see dead or gray is a dead ash. And that's an important hardwood tree if you think about it. There's a lot of things that we take for granted that are made from ash. For example, most baseball bats were made from ash. And I notice now there's a lot more hickory and sugar maple and hard rock maple and that sort of thing that they're making baseball bats out of, and whether they're as good as ash. But ash was the primary wood for that for a long time. And this is the little couple. I had these pictures available, so I thought I'd use them. If you have ash trees on your property, and this is not so much for probably Ian and Diana, because I don't know if you guys have white or green ash where you're at. You might, but this is more of an eastern deciduous issue. But they make a unique hole. If you see this shape of a hole, and you see it's kind of a D shape, hopefully you can see that on the screen. If you can, I guess you'll have to take my word for it. But they look D-shaped. One side's almost flat, and then the other side's a rounded arc all the way over to the other side. And if you look at the beetles, that's kind of how the beetle's made. But that's one way to tell that you've got ash borers. And Carol has said something here. Oops. The ash borer caused havoc in certain neighborhoods here about 20 years ago. That's interesting, Carol. Ash trees are great trees, and were great trees up until then. They're don't have all the data in front of me about that, but it seems to me like they were long lived. They were stout trees. They didn't break off easy like a lot of things they plant nowadays do. And this thing's been around for a while. It just started really moving around and taking up more and more, creating new or infesting new territories and places in the last 10 to 15 years. Yeah, Ian, I'm not sure you do either. And so you may not have seen this, although I'm sure there's something out in your neighborhood that something's eating or killing. Again, I'd have to pull out my dendrology maps or something, but I don't know what kind of spruce you guys have, or not spruce, firs, because the woolly adelgid attacks firs. Back here, they got mostly Fraser firs or balsam firs further north. Anyway, that's another bug. So these guys are bad news. I don't like them. And this is what the larvae looks like growing up, or pupae maybe. And what they do is they cut these trails in the inner bark of ash trees, because that's what they're feeding on. It's under the outside bark, and this inner bark layer is a cambium layer, or maybe even the one below that. And trees live by moving water and other things that they manufacture up and down through the tree trunk. So they bring water up and then send other things back down into the plant when it's converted over to sugars through the chlorophyll. No. Come on, Tim, think. Oh my God. When they use the sun to make food, and that all trees, they use carbon dioxide and convert that back to oxygen. In that process, they also create sugars and things that the tree itself lives on. So what happens when these bugs cut through the inner bark is they cut off their circulation, and over time, and actually this happens pretty fast. They'll just kill. They strangle the tree. They used to do something called girdling trees. It was a way to clear a lot of land in a fairly big hurry without having to cut all the trees down. What you do is you go in and chop a ring around the tree, or a whole bunch of trees. The pioneers did this. The first settlers did this. You cut that ring around the tree, and again, you're basically strangling the tree. The tree dies, the leaves all die, so you have sunlight coming in, and you can plant, crops underneath, and so you can live on them. And then in the meantime, you can start cutting the trees down and getting rid of the trees, but you get rid of the. Yes, Ian, photosynthesis. Thank you, my friend. And pine beetles are like this too, and that's how they kill trees. And we've had that. We had not a non-native species, but southern pine beetles here a few years ago that were absolutely devastating. Our problem is the elm narc beetle kills so much of our canopy. Well, yeah, that's a very similar bug. I don't know a lot about those. I'm not sure. They're probably out of Asia too. That's where most of these are from. Some came out of Europe. the elm trees that killed everything back east, or the blight, or whatever you want to call it, came out of Western Europe, like Holland and that area. It got the name Dutch elm disease, but the xylem and the phloem, Carol, that is correct. Thank you. Yeah, we had that too, Ian, for a little bit. Southern pine beetle has always been a reoccurring problem in the South, especially where you've got more pine forests. We have a mixed forest here, and it's primarily deciduous. But when you get big stands of pine, you run that risk. And then right around the turn of the century, we were having a lot of drought. So trees were really stressed. A lot of things were, and pine beetles moved in up here and just absolutely devastated any pine stands anybody had. Like big paper companies had them here. We're kind of at the northern range of that industry, but if there were some here, they killed them off, and they killed them off quick. I'm not kidding you. I saw them kill out some of our seed orchard pines. What seemed like 2 weeks. One day they're fine. 2 weeks later they're all dead, and it's very, very fast. It's having you go to the Rockies between fires and pine beetles, a lot of dead trees. Yeah, and pine beetles actually push that fire problem because, as I'm sure you're aware, when they kill those pines, they just become kindling. And that's another thing about pine beetle kills. The wood, for whatever reason, when they die, they back here at least, there's a fungus that comes along with the pine beetles somehow, symbiosis type thing, and they will infest the tree. And I guess that is part of what happens. But the trees dry out really quick, so they become very flammable pretty quick, faster than you would think. And I've got some pictures I'll show you that's sad back here from another species. But anyway, this is emerald ash borer. On one last bit, this is a map. On the right is a map that shows where they found them initially. In the east, as they spread, I don't know about initially, but as they spread in the east, this ash borer. And as you can see, they've covered just about it. They're down in about every state that has a lot of. You get down into Georgia much, and Alabama past this, you get into the pine stands and the big pine barrens and stuff like that. So that's about where they'll probably stop. But they've devastated like East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, Southern Virginia, Kentucky, on those areas. They really hit us hard. And I have some friends that live in Ohio. They had several killed right behind their house. And they've got a bunch back in the woods that are all dead now. I don't know if any of you ever saw these purple boxes, or these purple. Can a triangle be a box? These are triangular shaped traps that the Forest Service was using, or some part of the USDA was using to try to trap pine beetles. And you could tell they were emerald ash borer traps, because they were purple. I don't know if the purple color had anything to do with the borer, but maybe that's how they just distinguish different ones, because we have different color ones here all the time, or off and on for things. We had some down here at one time for gypsy moths, for example, and this, but these were trapping bugs, and this is how most of the time, this is how they detected them once they got here. And they would pick some up in the different counties, and then they knew. Yeah, great big kindling. That's right, Ian. Let's see what Tina's talking about. Thank you, Carol, for the added information there, because that's stuff I was probably going to zip by today. But that's very true and all good info. And so, and you guys, Ian and Diana, if you're still here, you can see that this obviously hasn't gone what I would call past the rain, what some people used to call the rain line or the water line or the wet line or whatever they call it in the West. So, and here's an interesting thing. There's some in the middle of, there are some in Colorado, Ian. You just barely can see them. You may not be able to see them, but I see them. Just a few little dots. And sometimes that happens because people carry them back and forth in their automobiles, or they happen to carry some firewood home with them from someplace, and they spread bugs and disease that way. And so much so that a lot of these places had signs up, campgrounds, state forests, national forests. Some even stopped and searched vehicles to make sure you weren't bringing in your own firewood from outside so that they can help control some of the spread. That was a really big deal with the gypsy moth, which is another invasive that I forgot to mention, but I may talk about it at the end. But anyway, they were marching south and fortunately got stopped before they got here because they would have wiped us out big time. In fact, the emerald ash borers might not have anything to eat if the gypsy moths had made it here first. So this little guy that you see on the left here is the balsam woolly adelgid, and it's a teeny tiny little booger. I mean, they just look like little white dots on the bark of the trees when you see them. And they did this along the top range of the Smoky Mountains. The tops of the Smoky Mountains, the highest peaks, are really unique because the forest up there is actually a more northern boreal type forest. It's got trees that don't normally live down south. And it's because of they refer to it as the last vestiges of the last ice age, because these trees grow in colder, cooler climates, but they're only on the top parts of mountains down here. And what's really bad about the adelgid problem is up there, those areas are where we have spruce trees and some northern pines, but not so much, just different kinds of spruce and firs. And they only grow just along these mountaintops is the only place they grow anywhere in the South. And it's a thin band of places they grow till you get much further north. And this is what they did. If you really look at that picture, or again, feel free to go look at woolly adelgid damage in the Great Smoky Mountains, or dead firs, or ghost forest. Some people listed pictures call it the ghost forest. But when you get up high, you just see all these dead trees. And the gray trees, it's not bark, the bark's falling off. It just is a stark contrast with all the other green further down below where there's not firs for them to eat. And up high where they're contrasted against other high altitude or northern species that they didn't touch. And they were very specific. They're called balsam woolly adelgid, and there are balsam firs further north. Down here in the mountains, we mostly had Fraser firs, and that's what they attacked. And boy, did they ever! It didn't take long, and they wiped us out. And I've got I've got pictures of them that show explain or show what to look for. But you can't really see the bugs because they're down in here. This is like I hate to call it a nest, but they actually live they're underneath this. This is where they're chewing and eating in the plant, and the plant bleeds off, mixed in with what their excrements or their juices, their mouth, whatever, saliva. Anyway, it causes these little patches of white fuzziness, which you can see over here, and this closer picture on the right. And if you see that on your your fir trees, you're in trouble, because at that point there's not much you can do for it. Well, this is actually the hemlock. Excuse me, I'm sorry. That was the balsam, which attacked firs, and this is the hemlock adelgin, which does it's almost the same critter. It does the same kind of thing, but this one attacks hemlocks. And there's a lot of hemlocks all over the east, and the Smoky Mountains are full of hemlocks. And they're very specific to where they live in the park or in our mountains. And so whole stands are, if they've not already been killed by this guy, are destined to be. Now there are some preventative measures you can take for this guy. They make some very effective deterrents that you can sprinkle on the ground. And because these are like a lot of other little bugs, they get there by the ground. They don't fly, they crawl. And I just see something in that picture that that's too big to be a bug. So, because these guys are tiny, you can see them. They're just like little specks on the tree. In fact, there's a couple that might be on this one over here, but you really don't see them well at all. Most of the time, you just see this. And by that point, you're in trouble. Oh, and here's a good one I bet some of you have seen. Hopefully Ian and Diana and actually Tina and Carol. Gee, I might be the only one. Dave, if you're still in here, and I know, I'd be willing to bet Don has seen these. But these are the fire ants that you've probably heard so much about. With my finger, Tina? Probably. I do that sometimes. I forget. I forget you can't see it. I should put the screen back here larger. I should put that on that's what I should do. I should put that on my TV behind me, and then I could point like a weatherman or a teacher. Very funny, Carol. I just caught the hemlock thing. That's a different kind of hemlock. The kind that kills you is called water hemlock, and it's more like watercress. I bet it grows up where you're at. Let's see, blue light blockers. You should try them. Well, we're talking about sunglassicles. I've lost track. I'm trying to catch up. Let's see here. My mother-in-law got tore up by fire ants last time she was at Myrtle Beach. Oh, yeah, they're bad. I mean, they're so bad. And for some people, they can be deadly. And some people, they're a nuisance. But they will swarm and they will get all over you. And it's not it's not just a fire ant thing. When I was a kid, I used to have to mow. I started mowing our yard when I was about 9. My dad was having some heart problems, so I was designated the shore keeper or the yard keeper. And but we had this in this house we lived in. We had this huge ant hill, but it didn't look like these exactly, but it looked similar. But it was flat and spread out around the roots of some trees in our backyard, and it probably covered. It was probably a couple of yards long and maybe a yard wide. It was one of the bigger ones I've ever had to mess with. And anytime I mowed across that, and these were the large black ants, which will bite, but not like these guys. But anytime I mowed across that, and I had to every time I mowed the yard, those things were all over me. They would boil out of that mound like an army, and they would just blacken the ground because they were out there fixing everything I tore up, and they would cover my shoes and run up I would say my pants leg, but I'm sure I was wearing shorts. Just very aggressively, and mostly it was just knock them off and keep going kind of thing. But these guys aren't like that. These guys don't usually run up your pant leg without doing some damage. And southern states, Texas, Arizona, Florida, the Gulf states, they all got these guys first. And a lot of people kept thinking, well, they won't come much further north because it'll get too cold for them. Because this is a South American bug. These ants come strictly out of South America. They're not from any other part of the world. And there's 2 species from there. These I just picked these. These are what some people call the reds. And there's a black species, but they're both pretty much the same other than coloration. And they're bad. I mean, here's a picture of them in this field with cattle, but they will even attack cattle or certain livestock and basically sting them to death, and then they would probably eat on them too. But I don't know if they attack them for food, but they attack them if they get into their nest. They're very strong. They have a very strong defensive sense and protection to protect the hive, not the hive, the anthills, and they attack. They just do what comes naturally to them, and they go for it. Yeah, Carol, be glad you don't. I've seen a few up here. I haven't run into a lot of them, but we do have them in Tennessee, certainly. Not upper pants leg, Lutina, so she still hasn't lived. I'm glad you learned something last weekend, or not last week, a couple weeks ago. Good one, Ian. Thank you, buddy. That makes me feel good. Somebody's listening. No, we have little ants that get in our house too. Every year we have to treat them, and usually they go away. We use something called Amdro. Brenda can spell it. I think it's AMDRO, or ANDRO. Maybe it's just Andro. And it really works. You just sprinkle some of it around your house, and maybe sprinkle some in, along your windowsills, and they pretty much just disappear. It's pretty handy stuff, and it's supposed to be reasonably safe, and not nearly so deadly or have the shelf life or the half life or the earth life that other killer type stuff does. We don't use much of that kind of stuff, but Andro we do use, and they're really good, Tina, for keeping ants out of your house. It really is. A guy at work told me about them, and it made a believer around Brenda and I. So anyway, you don't want to have red ants are another and in fact, they're what I would definitely consider a dangerous invasive. And this is a unique thing. This is a raft of red fire ants. They will cling together and link up and create their own floating raft to float on the water in a flood. Yes, Andro. Brenda, is it Andro? Spell it for Tina so she knows what to get. Yes, Tina, it's supposed to be safe with all pets and things. I don't think they'll mess with it anyway. It is Amdro. I had it right the first time. Anyway, I was reading up on these guys about this because I've always thought this was fascinating phenomena. And it said as soon as a nest or a colony senses that water is rising in the groundwater or around their nest, the colony, they immediately start linking up and forming these rafts to save the colony. This is an adaptation to protect their species and continue on. And this to me, this is just an amazing thing that these ants, I don't know if you call this intelligence or not, but it's certainly they certainly do work together. And it's an amazing thing. And I was going this last slide. I don't know how well you can see it, but this is a stinger from one of those guys, from a fire ant, and this is a large poison gland and a poison sac that they can nail you with, and they don't leave the stinger, of course, so they can hit you numerous times. And this leaves a pheromone that also will attract others. So that's one of the ways they swarm. Once they start stinging you, that releases a pheromone that just draws more of the ants to you. And they're doing that as a precaution. There he is, right there. Hang on, guys. Well, howdy.
Howdy. Sorry I'm late. I was herding little girls, which is way worse than cats.
I told everybody you might be granddaughter napped.
They have a dance today and a parade to go to, and it was a pretty good chore trying to just get them out of the house. Good morning, Tina. And so they're finally gone, and not to let all the dogs loose. And you got to be quite the goalie when we've got 8 dogs here at the house because we've got grand dogs too.
They're dog sitting and babysitting.
We got grand dogs, and we are. Good morning, Carol. we are. They're gone. They're out of the house now. They've gone to town.
I was telling them a little bit about the bath experience last night since we were on the phone here.
It was quite the deal.
Yeah, it was.
I'm gonna switch positions here, so maybe I can not be quite so dark. There we go.
Yeah, that's better.
There we go.
And you got louder too somehow.
I've got my.
Oh, where'd you get that?
I've got my Blackbeard on today. My son bought that. My son bought that for me.
Yeah, I've seen that flag before. Carol says, I just realized I was about 20 seconds behind when Tina agreed to Mark and I didn't see him.
Well, good morning, everybody. Sorry I'm late.
Well, we got here just in time to talk about. We're at fire ants at the moment.
Oh,
we've been talking about bugs so far, so you hadn't missed a whole lot, but I bet you've dealt with fire ants a little bit.
Yeah, I don't like them. They're actually causing. They've caused Texas horn lizards in Texas to become endangered.
Wow. Because I knew they'd been a problem with some species.
Because they had, and Texas horn lizards used to be a dime a dozen in that state, from east to west, and every place they have fire ants, they're in big trouble because they just eat ants, and so they crawl into a nest of fire ants, and they do the fire ant thing,
and the fire ants take care of them instead.
Yep.
Wow. I didn't think about that. There's a lot of lizards and things that do eat ants, so that would be a problem unless they are a species that has evolved to withstand the onslaught. But that's a tough nut to crack. You don't have them up your way, though, right?
No. We've got some big old ants that live up here, but they're native ants. Right. They're not causing any problems.
Well, I didn't look up a range. They are up to Tennessee, in some places worse than others. But I've seen a couple of nests up here, but I've never run into one or stepped into one or anything.
Well, if the country warms like they say it's potentially going to do, they'll certainly creep north.
Oh, yeah. Well, they've already creeped further. Some people thought they wouldn't get this far because they thought the winters might be too cold, but that's obviously not been it's not happened. So,
right.
Tina, you tell them. I bet Brenda doesn't know that either. Make sure the live indicator's red. I don't know if mine is or not. Okay, moving down the line, I think the next thing is, yeah, bring on the water.
Oh, yay.
Oh, this is one of my favorite critters. Not really. Actually, I should have put. I've got pictures. I've got my own pictures of these guys that I took it from work, and it's amazing because they showed up. They've actually shown up now on most of our reservoirs. They've gotten all the way up into our system. There's signs from here to the Gulf that used to say, if you put your boat in these waters, there's zebra mussels. So wash your boat out, bleach it out, do all these kind of things to try to make sure you don't take zebra mussels to the next reservoir you put your boat in. But people don't do that. They don't listen to that, and they don't pay any attention, and they just get moved around. So we've got them all the way up to Norris, which is otherwise completely landlocked. There's no anything that's got a gate, a lock, they can move up. That's going to happen. But Norris doesn't have a lock, so it's all brought in by boats. But
I was just waving to Ian.
Oh, okay. But anyway, these guys started showing up in the valley, I don't know, 15 years ago or less. I'm not positive when they got into the Tennessee River system. Well, they were probably in the lower end earlier than that. But they moved up pretty quick once they got going. And they're terrible. The only good thing that these guys have done that I can tell is they've been good for shell crackers. Shell crackers do eat them, and in places in the South where we've got a shell cracker is a type of sunfish. No, they're not big enough to eat. Well, I don't know, Tina. They're not very big. I don't know if they'd be big enough to eat, but I don't know of anybody that's tried to eat them.
They're just little bitty things.
Yeah, they're not very big. They look much bigger on here than they really are.
But they'll literally cover ropes. And
yeah, I've got a couple of pictures here to show you what they
city
can
water projects, and they're a huge threat to our way of life.
Well, here's something interesting about them. A lot of the people on Norris, the reservoir that I worked on, actually get drinking water out of the lake. They have their own filtration and water intakes and filtration systems, and they pump water in because they don't have any city water. There's no water available anywhere else. You either dig a 3,000-foot well or you got it out of the lake.
Yep.
And some friends of mine got theirs out of the lake and had, they had the whole system. It's not like you're just drinking lake water, although that water is pretty clean. And over time, they looked in their sump pump. They were able to get in things, I guess, to clean out filters or something. And they found some of these SOBs up in their system. So the larvae were actually getting up into the water stream or being sucked up into the water stream into their house. So they had to clean it out so they wouldn't clog it up. I don't know what they've done. Well, actually, they moved off the lake, but I don't know what they did to try to prevent it. But they were actually in their water system. They didn't have it all filled up yet, but I promise you, over time they would have. And I've got a couple of pictures. I don't know if they're next. They might be. Yeah, here's a couple of good pictures.
They're awful.
The picture on the left is a lock gate. Now, that's basically just a flat concrete swinging door, wall, whatever you want to call it. If you look close enough, you can see it's covered by these things. And this valve head or body on the right-hand side, you can see that it's completely covered, and they will just absolutely build up and build up and build up. What they do is they build up like this on like municipal water intake systems, cooling systems for nuclear plants, for example, or other power sources. He's fine for first. Oh, wait a minute. I'm messing up here good. We have natural resources off stations at a lot of our docks to make sure people are cleaning their boats. But that's good, Diana.
We have managed to keep them out of Wyoming, but we're one of the only states left. And it's all through enforcement. It's totally an enforcement deal.
Thank you, Ian, for explaining that. Yes, SOB is a technical wildlife term. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
I should have.
It has been for years.
It has been for a long time. Huge fine for first offense and jail time. Wow, that is impressive, Diana. Because down here, we'd be lucky to get a fine, much less jail time. Judges down here are way too. They're way too lenient for people that do things. I still believe that down here, people, including most judges, don't have a grasp on just how bad some of these kind of issues are. Mark, no, don't jinx it, Mark. I'll put that up there so you can see it. But I'm impressed that they do that. That's actually a good thing. I'm gonna have to say I'm all for that. I'd hate it if I was paying the fine. I'm quite sure, but I love the fact that they're actually doing it because that's what it takes. So if they can keep them out of your neck of the woods, you're much better off. But you can imagine the money people spend. This is another thing you have to look at. I mean, yeah, they're a big problem. I mean, they're all over this lock gate, but it's still functioning. But if they cover over a water intake, that's got to be fixed. If they cover over a nuclear plant water intake, that's got to be fixed. And think of the money and the expense that all these companies have to go to keep them cleaned off of their intakes and stuff. And they are working hard to do that. TVA was trying to figure out paint. They were blending paint with capsaicin to try to figure out if that would repel them. And I don't know that it did. So they try all kinds of things just to keep them off these surfaces because they spend millions of dollars every year cleaning them, and that gets passed on to the ratepayers. So anything like that these agencies or local utilities can do to not have to do it, so much the better. Speaking of invasive species,
yep, look at that.
There's a Boudreaux Campbell.
He's 25 pounds now. Oh my God.
Oh my God, he's bigger than Teddy now. I think.
25 pounds.
You missed saying hi to Boudreaux.
He's growed up on your show.
He has. He was just a little bitty guy.
I used to be able to hold him in my hand.
Yeah, he was just a little guy when he first showed up there. He looks like a big dog now.
Yeah. Well, the big dogs can't outrun him anymore. So he got them little tiny stumpy legs, but he's fast.
He's got them moving. He has them moving. Okay, I think I've got one more picture of these guys, maybe. Nope. Now I'm going to move on to fish, and this is another one that people never thought about. Probably these are Oscars, which are a cichlid.
So how big are they getting? Eating size.
Oh, they're big eating. Yeah. I bet you in Florida, there's some that are just as big as peacock bass.
Really?
I wouldn't doubt it. We had one. Brenda had one that we raised from about this big. Hopefully she's still in here. To where he was at least this big and probably he weighed at least 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds. Hey, Mike, welcome in. And it was amazing, and he was smart too. You could do signs with your hands. She could, and he would go around the tank and wait for food. He was like Steve Cottrell's bluegill.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he actually seemed to learn. Yeah, it's learned behavior for food, I guess. But yeah, he could do a lot of things. But we didn't turn him loose in the lake. And these guys can live in the lake if your lake water is warm enough. And I don't know what their actual temperature range is, but as long as your water is staying, I bet between 50, at least 60 or 70 up to whatever it gets to. I imagine they go, and I'd be willing to bet they reproduce. I don't know how much. I don't know
I'll
how
guarantee you they're
go,
reproducing.
huh?
I'll guarantee you they're reproducing.
Yeah, I mean, I would too, because anytime they say they're probably not, they probably are.
In Florida, Florida's admitted they've got. Well, not this is probably one of the least harmless or the most harmless of the bunch. Is that a term? Most harmless. Anyway, they're least harmful of their invasive fish species. But my gosh, they'd be fun to catch.
Well, they are fun to catch, and that's the thing. Those rainbow bass are fun to catch, and that's no doubt why they got up here. People brought them up from Venezuela because they were fun to catch, and they grew right up in Florida and took to it like it was home. And now they're a huge problem. I mean, they're exploiting it as a sport fishery or as part of their sport fishery, but they don't belong there.
Right.
I guarantee you they're displacing something that was native to that region.
Yep, and probably eating a bunch of things that don't need eating.
Absolutely. And let's see where I'm at. Here's my.
That's a nasty one.
Here's another one, and actually, there's actually two species of this fish that hang out in parts of the Caribbean now and the coast of Florida. There's one that's just kind of the common lionfish, and it actually may be native, but it's not very numerous. This guy is an import. He's been brought in from other places, southern waters, Indo-Pacific, I believe, primarily, and this guy is getting to be a problem off the Florida coast, and especially in the Caribbean, around the Caribbean islands. They catch and dispose of these things by the dozens when they can get people to go out and fish for them, and they spearfish for them down there a lot.
And it's a must kill in all those jurisdictions, as far as I'm aware. It's a must kill.
Yes,
if you catch one, you got to kill it.
Yes, that is a fact. You got to get rid of it, because they don't want them down there, and they're harmful to the ecosystem. They're eating fish that don't need to be ate. They're eating fish that other fish, native fish, should be eating, and they sting and hurt real bad. Not to mention that part. And,
well, they're doing something to corals too.
Yes, they do. They eat native corals around here. That's another problem. They chew on them and do something else to them, but they're very hard on native corals, and that's a problem. That's a big problem because so many places corals are dying off, and it's very hard to keep corals going in some places down there now, and they're working real hard on doing that. There's coral farms down there now where they're growing. Brenda, are you still in here? What do they used to call those little? They do like plugs almost, a coral, where they grow it, get it started in a controlled area, and then they go out and plant them, if you will, around on coral reefs. What's Tina saying? Mr. Grumpy Pants himself. Wait a minute. Look at Jurassic Park. Nature will find a way. Okay, who's Mr. Grumpy Pants? I gotta go back and catch up on the chat here for a minute. Bear with me. Ian said he knew it was coming. Nature will find a way. Have we said that, or is that something else? I watched the new one yesterday. Oh no, I just watched the new one yesterday. Well, what is it I'm missing out here, guys? Oh, the new Jurassic Park. And how was that, Carol? And there's Mr. Grumpy Pants himself. Maybe she's talking about the fish. I haven't seen it yet, Carol. I just know Nick didn't like it. Was it good, Carol? I've wondered if it was any good. That fish, okay, good. He does look grumpy. He kind of reminds me of Grumpy Cat. I was not expecting to like it. I had only seen the original, but I did like it. Oh, that's cool. I liked the last couple actually. I think I missed one in there. I tell you, the first time I saw Jurassic Park, I was actually fascinated by it. I was fascinated by the concept, even if there was a slight possibility of that. Okay, Ian, fill me in, buddy. What are you saying? What's she saying that I'm missing? Obviously, I have not noticed, Tina, so I need to get caught up. Oh, Carol, you and I, we can sit and watch something else while everybody goes to the movies because I'm not a good movie person either. It depends on what it is, and unfortunately, I don't go see a lot of things that when I do finally see them, like on my TV, then nature will find a way. Okay, and it will, and it has. And these are pleasant little fish. These are something new. Do you guys have these up in any of the big rivers out your way yet?
No,
Well,
I don't know if they've come up the Missouri. I
don't either.
I suspect maybe in the lower Missouri they've got them because they've certainly got them in the Ohio and the Illinois River
absolutely. Yeah,
and all the way up to Mississippi, all the way to Minnesota, and yeah, they certainly could live here. I don't think they can get through all the lock and dams to make it, but
that slows them down for sure.
And it might be that they hit a spot, like in Nebraska or somewhere where it's just too cold.
Man, they might. These guys are really bad. And you may have heard of these. A lot of people call them the flying carp because you run up a lake in a boat or up the river, and these guys will start jumping out of the water. They say some can jump up to 10 feet. And what has been happening is, well, one, they're displacing other fish species, obviously, in the system. They don't belong here. They've multiplied and exploded. But they jump up like this. You're going down the lake in a boat, and they hit people in the boat. They've knocked people out of boats. They've caused people to get, broken jaws and other damage. I mean, they really hurt you because some of these guys get up to be several pounds big. And that's another thing, Ian. You probably hadn't lived till you've had one of these slimy bastards in your face.
25-pound fish hit you in the face going 40
when you're
miles.
Going 50.
When you're going 40, 50 miles an hour, it's going to do damage.
So they're trying really hard to keep these guys. I think it's Illinois has had a lot of problems with them.
Terrible. Yeah.
When they got down to Tennessee, we've been trying to keep them, TVA at least has been trying to keep them from coming up the TVA system. And I think the Cumberland too, which is the Corps of Engineers, but they've been trying to keep them under control by trying different kinds of gates, if you will, electric gates, water bubbles, different ways to deflect. What's a better word? Not encourage them to go further. Because if you've got a lock or something, it's easy. They just swim in, swim out the other end. They're there. Again, this is another species that's probably got started out as a bait fish, probably.
Well, they were raising them, and so a bunch of those boys I went to school with in Arkansas that were aquaculture boys.
Yeah, were they raising
their daddies had great big fish farms in eastern Arkansas.
Yeah.
And they were raising these things as a fertilizer fish. They were using them, they ground them up and made fertilizer out of them. And they had silver carp farms all over northern Louisiana and eastern Arkansas, and that's where they came from. They got out during one of the big Mississippi floodings, once they were in the Mississippi system, then they, quickly, rapidly, it's probably been 25 years now that they escaped, but that was the main source of these things.
Okay.
Was
These
when
guys
all
got
those
out that
fish
way.
farms flooded there, from Jonesboro all the way down the east side of Arkansas and down into northern Louisiana. And they may have been raising them in Mississippi. It was
Yeah.
another aquaculture product people trying to make a living off of that didn't belong here, and like they always do, they got out.
Well, that probably happened. It may have happened before this, but that fits the timeline of the 93. I think it was 93 to
Yeah, it would have been right in
93
there.
floods.
Yep.
When the Mississippi got out of its banks, got it overran so many levees all the way down through Louisiana from way up north. I know, again, Illinois, Missouri. It was bad that year, and that could very well have been when they got out. And that makes sense on the timeline. And I may have even heard that before. I'd forgotten about that. But that's tilapia are the same way in some places. They've actually gotten out now.
Right.
Tilapia is another farm raised fish. I think it's Asia, if it's not South America. And they raise those for
They're
food.
an African fish.
African, okay. And they've spread, in some states now they've spread. I don't know how far they've gotten. I don't know if they're up here, but I'm sure they're in the more southern states and probably faring pretty well.
Yeah, and some of these species have some, once you get them and you're stuck with them, at least they've got some value, like a tilapia. They're pretty good eating. But,
yeah, they're just, some people think they're a little bland, but they're good eating. They're good white meat.
But silver carp have no, other than maybe as aerial bow fishing, they have no value whatsoever.
Okay, Ian says that he looked up on a map and they've actually had them north of Fort Collins, but not to Wyoming. He said, sorry, Hamilton Reservoir. Do you know where that's at?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay.
They've
had sightings of silver carp or zebra.
Yeah, apparently silver carp. So that's getting close to you.
Yeah, different river system, but.
Well, yeah, but.
They must have come up the Arkansas.
Maybe. If you
that would be the Platte. That would be that if it's around the Pooter, that's got to be the Platte River system. Goes into the South Platte, I think. DVC exclusive silver carp, maybe.
That's a Disney joke. If it's DVC, that's people would buy it as a collector's carp. What she's saying, what she's doing is casting shade upon the.
Sounds like she's marketing fish.
Well, she would be. That might be something we keep that under your hat, Tina and Carol. Maybe we should talk about that offline. It might be a good idea. Okay, looks like Eastern Kansas, Nebraska, and North Dakota is furthest west for big clumps of them. So, but that just shows you how much they're moving. They've. Tina says tilapia is a garbage eating fish, so I'm sure it's doing fine. So it's another bottom feeder. I don't know much about tilapia.
They use tilapia to clean up after the striped bass in aquaculture systems.
Oh, do they?
They're raising striped bass as a food fish, and then the tilapia are in there eating after them and cleaning up after them, and then they sell those as a food fish. So
there you go. Disney I don't know if they still have them, but in the Living with the Land exhibit, that was one of the things they used to show as a farming, alternate food source that could be farmed. And there's a lot of species that have been farmed for that purpose, and I do feel like there's a place for that because we're overfishing the oceans and lots of other places. So I do get that, but a lot of them have been quite. I mean, they seem to work, but then there's usually an issue. I mean, that goes for certain kinds of prawns and areas of Southeast Asia. Shrimp fish, basically shrimp farming, that has turned into a problem for their. I think down in South America, that's an issue too. And tilapia has maybe worked and not been so bad, but some of these other fish species have been. Raising salmon in these farms or areas where they used to raise them out. I don't know which ones are good or bad, but they used to raise some out in the ocean in these giant floating pens. And those might be the better ones to have. But evidently, when they eat a lot of artificially supplied food, fish food basically, is not as healthy as a natural salmon, which makes sense, I'm sure. Okay, Tina was, I got Carol being a smart aleck. I wanted to get that on record, Carol. Nothing personal. They still have them. Oh, okay. She's telling me they still have tilapia down there. Well, they used to show things like alligators, even that some people farm raise alligators for the hides and for food. That gators got a lot of good eating on it, and you might as well get all the good out of them you can. You can sell just about the whole alligator anymore, from claws to
There's a guy in Louisiana that Mike Rowe's been on. I see that Tina was mentioning Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe went to a guy's alligator farm, and he actually marks wild nests and collect. He has a permit to collect eggs from the wild, and then he raises those gators, and he keeps part of them, and part of them have to be re-released to where he captured them. And we were talking about fire ants earlier. They really got into the fire ants in that show.
On Mike Rowe's show?
Mike Rowe's show. When they were down there like robbing gator nests, you'd turn a gator nest over and take the vegetation off the top, and there'd be fire ants and all that, and they'd just eat them alive.
I never thought about that. That's a good point. Yeah, it can be a little gross, Tina, but it all works out in the end. Nature does. Okay, next picture. And these are a couple. We've talked about the northern snakehead before. That's become an issue. They really worked hard to keep these guys out of waters. I heard one time when I was still in school, there was a big deal because they found some in a pond up in Maryland, I think, and we're sure they'd been released. And they basically went in, as I recall, and rope-nomed that pond, which is a natural poison that kills fish, and killed everything in that pond so they could make sure that whatever was in there didn't go any further than that. But when you get down to having them in Florida, that's almost like their native habitat. So once again, they propagate and do well. And I've seen people bow fishing for them down there and stuff. So apparently they're quite common.
I don't think they were successful in Maryland either. I think they've got them all over the state now.
Well, they probably did. They probably weren't, because
they found one location for them, but they had already spread from even that location. And the bad thing about these fish is that they're semi-capable of like crawling up on the ground and going to the next body of water.
Yeah, they're kind of like a walking catfish in that regard. And like catfish, you can throw one up on the bank and it won't die for a long time. I've seen catfish live in a bucket of water for days before it even began to roll over upside down. I mean, they're tough in that regard. And if these guys can crawl, flop, or otherwise get to another puddle of water, they're going to keep moving. Brenda says she's seen something we've talked about. Caught the end joke too, Mark. Okay. Thank you, Ian. It's almost like Tina said, it's almost like the fire ants were protecting the gators.
Well, they were actually killing the nests. So if the nest had a big colony of fire ants on it, it kept the female off the eggs, kept her from tending them, and the eggs rotted and died. So yeah,
Oh.
they're bad. They're a bad item.
So these two fish, like I said, we kind of talked about the northern snakehead. They're very predatory on native species. I mean, they got a mouthful of teeth. So, but they're fun to shoot with a bow, I guess. I mean, I'm sure if I was there, I'd be doing that. Now, this little guy down here is a kind of a different sort of story. That's an alewife. It's also it's like a shad or a herring. They're native on the East Coast. They're actually an anadromous fish. I never say that right. In other words, they live in the ocean and then run up into rivers and spawn. And I think these guys just run back down. I don't think they die. And for the most part, we think of them as a small fish. I'm not sure exactly how big they get overall, but it's another example of where we took a fish that was native to, say, New England, but only New England, and moved it down into Middle Tennessee or somewhere like that to use as a bait fish or to some other purpose we thought it would be good for. And then they took off, and now we have those here, and they're considered an invasive as opposed to, say, a native herring or a native shad or something, if there is such a thing. And again, they're probably not the worst things in the world to have. Some lakes they've had more impact than others. I can remember trapping or looking for them in some of our lakes 25 years ago, and we were trying to see the numbers then. I think they brought these guys in. I almost want to believe they brought these guys into. Oh, I know what it was. Somebody said they were trying to reestablish more walleye in certain areas of the state and the waterways. And they thought this would be a great bait fish for that. And they brought them in, and then walleyes didn't necessarily eat them and they didn't do all that well in farm ponds, I guess, or rearing ponds. But the alewife did just fine and are still going strong. Occasionally, these guys are kind of like shad. Shad are certain shad, like gizzard shad, are very susceptible to temperature change. And if it gets too cold all of a sudden, and they live near the surface a lot, they'll just die off in hordes and they'll be washing up on the shore. And it looks like a giant fish kill. And people used to call us all the time. And that would happen anytime the temperature would drop down below 40. You'd get big fish kills of these guys, and they'd wash up on somebody's yard, and then they'd start, raising Cain about stuff, calling concerned about fish kills. Anyway, so that's two more fish. I don't know if I have. Oh, and then we got this guy. And I do believe this might be my least favorite. It's on my top 5 least favorite fish in the whole wide world, at least that I can think of. I mean, look at that mouth. If you can see it on the right there, those are teeth. And they've got a tongue that looks like a drill bit off an oil rig or something. And they can drill right through skin of a fish, scales, and basically suck a fish dry from its innards. Or I don't know. I guess they would kill the fish eventually, but I don't know if they're good enough a parasite to hang on for a long time or not. It's a lot of critter to feed for, not to. And there's an example of them being on a lake trout. And I think that's a lake trout, or maybe that's a salmon. But anyway, it's some that species of fish. And these guys got in purely accidentally. Again, nobody thought about this until it happened. These guys these were ocean fish. They were in the St. Lawrence River mouth area. but they couldn't get past like Niagara Falls and those kind of obstacles in the river to get into the Great Lakes system. So they'd never been in that kind of fresh water. Well, once they finished all the canals and lock system on the Great Lake, and I can't think of the name of that system, it's named after somebody in Canada. Well, they just floated right on in and rode the fish or drove themselves in or whatever. They just moved right on into the Great Lakes, and they spread from one end to the other in pretty rapid succession. So there used to be, the Great Lakes used to have a huge lake trout fishery. I mean, that was one of the things people went up there to catch, was big lake trout. And thanks to these guys, that pretty much got destroyed. These guys went, again, they were an introduced predator. Well, actually more of a parasite fish. I don't know how you'd rank them. Mark, what would you call them?
They're a parasite. They generally don't, until enough of them have attacked a single fish, they're usually not fatal.
Okay. They put big old holes in them.
But they leave them exposed to disease and, all that stuff and they're just they're working hard trying to get rid of these guys. But
yeah, this is another one they're trying really hard to stop and or get rid of.
They sterilize the males. They do all kind of cool stuff to trying to keep them kind of at bay, but they're
and that's another issue with all these fish, all these introduced species, especially these in the water. They are so detrimental to everything we do, like our water in supplies and our power supplies and our fisheries and stuff, that the government spends lots of money trying to stop them and keep them from getting worse. And that money, as I say, comes from somewhere.
Could have been used for better purposes.
Could have been used for much better purposes. And once they're in, that was the other thing I was going to say. Once they are into a system, they're damn hard to get rid of. They get in there real easy, but it's not like just shooing them back down the river to the ocean. They don't oblige. And until we find a way to do that, I guess we're stuck with them. But this is just an ugly example. These things I just think are so gross that, and the more you know about them, the grosser they get. I've looked at them. I think I've held one in my hand, or at least had one up close from a formaldehyde jar. And like I said, that tongue is like a rotary rasp. They just chew right down into all that suction cup mouth, and those teeth there, they latch on, and they don't want to come off. And then that tongue comes down and bores a hole through them, and then they start sucking the nutrients right out of the fish. And like Mark said, they ride around as long as they can, and if they have to, they'll go get another fish. But
they've attacked people, swimmers, yeah.
That'd be wonderful to have.
They'll latch onto your side of your neck and things when you're swimming. No, they're plumb pleasant. And we've got native lampreys that are freshwater lampreys that are not parasites.
Yeah.
That are, totally harmless. They're a lot smaller than these guys. But yeah, this is one of the more nasty, gross fish on the planet.
They're just, I would say they're evil, but
the nastiest,
not evil. But
the nastiest fish on the planet's a hagfish.
Well, yeah, that's why I had to hesitate when I said my least favorite fish, because I thought about anglerfish and hagfish. Those things are really bad.
Well, I mean, they do what they do, but they're just gross. But there you go.
Well, anyway, I was going to ask Carol if she. I mean, she lives up on the Great Lakes. We'll come back to that. Have you ever seen one, Carol? Have you guys ever spent any time, up Mackinac or anywhere like that and run into these creatures? I can't help myself.
Ernest T.
Bass. Creatures.
Well, hello, Boudreaux Campbell. Hi, buddy.
What's he doing down there? He getting in trouble?
He's just down here. Come to say hi.
Okay, Mark. I said earlier you weren't here, but I haven't told why, but I have all new flags, not new flags, but different up today. And I've got a Scottish flag, my Welsh flag, an Irish flag, and I still have my Ukraine flag. That's different, but there's a theme here, and my name, and you might figure it out. I don't know if anybody else has or not. I may not have said that again, but Carol says she's never seen any and hopes she never does. Well, that's good. Although, your kids ought to see them someday just so they know what the heck they are because they're out there. And I don't know how close you are to Erie or Huron or whichever one you're closest to. I guess like Erie, but they're out there. They're out there.
Think about that next time you get in the water.
Think about that the next time you go.
They're about that long.
Yeah, they're not little either. Yeah, they're not little bitty things. They're big enough to get your attention. Okay, now we get over here and we got mostly this is a pet trade issue, another pet trade issue, although it's probably not entirely. Critters do sneak over on cargo ships and they sneak over on banana boats and other kinds of things. But these two geckos they're just two geckos. Correct me, Mark. Do we have any native gecko out west or anywhere?
Yes, we have banded geckos that live in the Southwest.
Okay.
That are wonderful little lizards, beautiful little lizards, but they're not related to these true geckos at all. They're all by their lonesome kind of family wise. But yeah, so but they don't cling on the side of homes and things like true geckos do.
Okay.
Like these Mediterranean geckos, you go to southern Arizona, those things are like everywhere.
Yeah, and this is another. After this slideshow, we are never leaving our house again. Carol, that wasn't the intention. I'll be spending a week in the Alex Bay area in August. I will try to avoid them. I'm sorry. This wasn't intended to, keep you out of water.
And the human interaction thing is real rare. But it happens.
We just had to throw that in there for effect. And anyway, these guys, I don't know if you've seen these at Disney World, you guys that go. I don't think there's anybody in here that lives in Florida, but I've seen these guys all over, probably Mediterraneans. This common house gecko is actually, I tried to pull out names that might be familiar, and these are both house geckos. The one on the left is known as the Mediterranean. The one on the right, it has another name too, but it's most oftenly just referred to as the common house gecko. But I've seen these guys on like the bathhouse walls at the campground at night. I never really saw them out in the daytime so much.
Yeah, they're almost strictly nocturnal.
But they were always out busy catching bugs and stuff at night on those back walls. And Alexander Bay is the St. Lawrence.
They probably actually provide some benefit. We had.
Yes, it is, Tina.
We had them all over our house in Arizona, and I know they were eating scorpions and things, which was okay with me.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, they probably do have that benefit, and I don't know. I'm sure there's places where they are not so welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Some other places, they're probably, in Florida, there's a good chance if they're eating bugs, they're probably doing somebody a favor. Whether I think they should be there or not, it's another point. But I've got a couple of Florida residents coming up too. That these are, if you've noticed, there's a theme here. Several of these critters are in Florida. But anyway, look around. Like I said, these guys, you see a lot of the next lizard I'm going to show it in Florida and Disney World and places. But these two you're going to see down there also. But probably, I think you're going to see them at night. That's when I always saw them. And I know Brenda and I were walking around the campground one evening, and I shone a flashlight like over on the back of the house, the bathhouse wall, where it was kind of dark. It was sort of in the trees, and man, these things were all over the place. And I was, of course, surprised and excited both. And, running over to see if I could catch something, but I didn't really have a setup. These would be great fun to catch on a fly rod and a noose or something. And you could probably make a living selling them at the pet store because they're very plentiful. Here's another critter that came at least to some degree out of the pet store, and it's the spectacle caiman. People used to buy alligators at the pet stores. I know some of you have seen that. It might not have been common, and depending on where you are, where you live, they might not have, but I've seen them. But what you were buying most likely was a caiman. In fact, I'm pretty sure they were all caimans if it was legal at all, because caimans you could sell because they weren't endangered here and they weren't indigenous here. And a lot of states won't let you sell indigenous wildlife, in other words, native species, but you could sell these guys. So when they talk about the sewers in New York being full of alligators, it's more correct probably to say they're full of caiman, if there's any at all. But these guys have also been a problem in some places, again, in Florida, but along the coast and in Louisiana, I think they're also down there. And not sure if they're up into the North Carolina swamps in that area.
Excuse me.
But that's another reptile that's been a problem in the warmer subtropic zones of our country. That probably never should have been here. Okay.
Big mouse.
They're talking about mice problems now in Florida. Around Kissimmee. Seen two huge ones down there.
Hey,
well, I'm going to show you a big rat in a minute.
Big old black-eared dome.
Not sure what kind of rats those are, to be honest. Maybe they're black rats. Rattus. I think Rattus is a black rat. And these guys, again, Florida, if you look on a range map, these guys are from more tropical areas, depending on which ones they are, South America, the Caribbean, maybe, further down in Mexico. But now they're in Florida and along the Gulf Coast.
And you're hooked on phonics, I see. It's juvenile.
Oh, sorry. I thought I fixed that. Oh, go back. Screen. I did. I thought I went back and fixed that. Okay, so anyhow, this is a black iguana. And these are a little bit more isolated in Florida, but they are in Florida. And they're eating things they shouldn't be eating, and they're eating things that native stuff should be eating, but they're down there.
How big a lizard is that?
The big ones, when they're adults, get up to at least a couple 3 feet long with their tail. Their tails are really long, just like most iguanas. And but we got two species down there now. We got this black iguana, which is not as common yet. And then, well, they don't have. I thought I put it next in line. Let me skip and come back. And then you got this guy. Now this is a green iguana.
Yeah.
And these guys are more common down there now. They've been around down there longer. This is a young one too that's sunning and in full color. Most of these lizards can change their color a little bit, or they're different morph levels. But this one, as you can see, is, I said bright green. I'm not sure that's correct, but it's green. And here's the thing about these guys. Those other ones aren't so arboreal. These guys are tree climbers. And they feed and they get up in the trees a lot. So they have a problem when they in Florida. Anytime the temperature gets below about 40 down there, they start falling out of trees. And they literally have, I've heard people refer to it as raining iguanas. Now, what I've not figured out, what I think should happen is when that happens, they should go out and collect them all while they're still laying on the ground and get rid of them. I don't know if they've come up with a plan to do that or not, but people laugh about it or they talk about the iguanas falling out. But these guys will sit on a limb or up against the trunk of a tree, and if it gets below 40, they start to lock up. And since they're a warm-blooded animal, and they literally lose their grip and fall out of the tree and go thud on the asphalt or the concrete or the whatever's below them, and they lay there until the temperature gets warm enough that they can start moving again. So it doesn't kill them yet. I guess if it gets cold enough, it might.
Oh,
do they really mind them there, Tim? Yes, I think some people do, Tina. I'm sure there are some people who don't care one way or the other. She was mentally correcting my spelling. Well, you guys could proofread.
Did you?
If anybody wants to volunteer to proofread my work, you're welcome to.
Did you hear that big thud?
No, what was that?
Well, it was a robin being chased by a Cooper's hawk, and they both hit my window here. I thought they were going to break it.
Did the Coopers hit the window too?
Yeah.
Did it get up?
They're both gone. I bet they won't. I bet they got a headache.
Tina wants to know if that was an iguana hitting the window.
It was a hawk.
Wow. I hate he missed his breakfast, but hopefully he won't. Hopefully it didn't break his neck.
Yeah, he's not laying out there, so.
That happens fairly regularly when I'm talking to Mark. Birds running.
Yeah, it's thudding on this window. I love this window, but it's been so far it's never killed a bird that I know of, but it's probably coming.
Yeah, it'll happen. They used to do that in my mom and dad's picture window in their living room, and they didn't have bird feeders or anything out there chasing them so much. It didn't happen a lot, but every once in a while it would, and several of them I picked up off the ground. It just smashed their heads in, like broke your necks or something.
My feeder's only about 10 feet from the window, and I think that's what saves them is that they can't get that big a run.
They don't have enough speed up. So anyway, you might see these guys your next visit to Disney. And Tina, I hope I answered your question. I mean, I know that probably vaguely, but I don't like them being there. I wouldn't want them down there if I lived there, and I'd be out there picking them up, throwing them in a garbage can if they hit the ground. But some people probably don't care. But again, this is a big lizard, and I know a lot of people that would scream and run away just if they saw this thing walking in their yard. I mean, they get pretty large.
Yeah, they're like 5-6 feet long from tip to tip.
Some of them are. A full-grown one is, yeah.
Yep.
And it gets worse. Hang on a minute. Let me go back up here to the anolas, and I'll come back through the list I missed. I wanted to show you black and greens. I meant to put those together just like I meant to fix that juvenile. Okay, this is a guy that I know a little bit about because I worked with him some. Hey, buddy. Come here. Oh, guys, here's the spooky. Say hi to everybody. Wow. I felt something pecking me on the arm. This is my old man. He's, I don't know if he's getting close to the end or if he's just.
I think he's going to live forever.
Well, I do too, but I think he's figured out that it's time for him to get his 2 cents worth in. And he was never a troublesome cat. He wasn't one of them that came begging or hung around the table or, hollered for something all the time. So I think now he's decided it's his turn. So now he's just a little bit more pesky, aren't you? Mm-hmm. I felt him crawling down in the covers beside me last night. That's a new thing he's just started. Anyway, this is a Cuban or just a brown anole. And and it's the scientific name is Enola segrii, and it's a big brown. These are little dinosaurs, little velociraptors, maybe even, I don't know, but they're no, they're not. They don't run on their back legs. But if you go to Florida, you're going to see a mix of these in the next one I'm going to show you. And this guy in some places is more common now than the native. That's been a concern for some time, that they would outcompete, because they're more aggressive than the greens. In fact, I don't know if this is related or if this is because just strictly climate change, but they have moved up now. There are now fairly significant pockets of greens living up this way. They're not that far south from here in Knoxville now. There used to be a little pocket of them in South Tennessee, southeastern Tennessee, and that was the only group anybody knew of until you got down around maybe South Georgia and Florida. But there's more of an expansion. The green ones are expanding. These guys will probably come with them. Can you imagine what we'd have done if we'd had these things growing up? And
it's been great.
a willow stick or a fishing pole tip with dental floss on it or something. We'd have
been catching them all the time.
That'd have been better than fishing. Raised in the parks. Good morning. Is that my daughter? It almost looks like my daughter.
She said she was saying hi.
Oh, there she is. I guess I should say hi to Dad. Well, yes, you should. Hi there, Gino.
Is that Kizzy?
That's Kizzy. We say hi to Mr. Mark too there. Don't forget. He's the one that introduced
Oh, Kizzy.
The only thing greater than you. She's my oldest, Tina. That's Jennifer. Mark has known her since she was a very wee tyke.
A young. Pre-gen.
Yeah, pre-gen. So anyway, this is the big guy, and I wanted to show you these and the other ones so you could kind of see the difference in them. But this is a big male, and this is what they do, the dewlap or whatever they call it in these guys. I think they do call it a dewlap. They open that up when they're looking for a female, and which I guess is something they do just about all the time. And they'll run that out there. That's also a display that you can. That one's got this a brown. One way to tell a brown over a green, because greens can turn brown also, is that sagittal crest on its head, and then see how it's more prominent running down its spine, and that's something that doesn't always stick up as much. That's another kind of a breeding, scare the other guy off kind of thing. And you may catch up again. Holy mackerel, I was way behind. That is Mr. Orange. Yes, it is. So anyway, and then the females are just kind of plain. They don't have that big crest. They don't have the dew flap. They don't. And these guys can change colors a little bit. They just basically get darker and lighter. Not the greens are more, as you'll see in a moment, can really change. Well, they're basically dual tones. They can only do two colors, but those two colors they do well. So that's the Cuban or the brown. This is the invasive species, and this is the native species that there has been concern about them displacing for some time. And when I was down there, we were catching both and counting to see which ones were more predominant. And we did find islands where browns would be more predominant, and we found islands where the greens were more predominant. And at that time, my impression was they seemed to be holding on. but the browns definitely are more aggressive, and they do fight sometimes with the male greens. So here's a male green. You can see he's got the same dew flap, and it's similar color. Might be more red than orange, but look at his head. The head is smaller. He doesn't have that really extended sagittal crest on his head or the stripe down his back. And the female head is slightly slimmer. If I used to be able to tell them apart just by looking at them real quick, because when you're handling them all the time, you learn to identify them just by looking at them. And here's what they can do. They can go from this brown, dull brown color, almost like the brown anole, but they can turn this bright green. And they change that by their background. If they're on a green leaf, they turn green, and it makes them a lot harder to see. Now you see these guys a lot in Florida. I would have said at one time you mostly see these. I don't know right now. Last time I was there, it's probably about 50-50, but you do still see these. And like I said, so far, I don't think they've been totally displaced, but they have moved. The green ones have moved further north. I don't know. Temperature may keep the browns from coming up that high. But then again, I used to think that's what kept the greens further south also, but there they are. So are you leaving, Jeno? Uh-oh, I took a joke out of your head, Tina. I'm sorry. Yes, the browns are the invasive ones, Tina. I thought you were talking in class. And they came over years ago out of the Caribbean. They're called Cubans. I called them Cubans. The correct name is technically Enola segrii, but they came over on, again, boats and things coming out of the Caribbean islands, and they stayed. It's like other species we've talked about today. They hung around. I don't know, Jennifer. Jennifer, one of the things that I thought was cool that Jennifer got to do at Disney World, she may not have, but I thought it was cool, was we let her do a natural environmental type study thing they used to do at Disney World, where it's almost like a little mini camp where the kids went off with a group of Disney personnel and saw things like gators and bugs and birds. I mean, they had different ones, and that's the one she went on. I've still got her books over here on the shelf. I'd like to give her back. But do you remember anything like that there, Jen? I know that's been a long time ago. You probably don't. Tina, I don't know if you're a good representation. I'm not sure you're representing me the way I would prefer for my children, although you're not telling them anything they don't already know. You were going to say because one is brown and one is green, but that's not entirely true, Tina. As you can see from this picture, yes, I thought it was super cool, but made me very aware of the gators around, and we were camping that year. Oh, I didn't remember that. I forgot about camping that year. Ian says, I've never talked in class. Yes, Carol, I was one of those kids. And our site was right next to the creek. Yeah, well, maybe it was. See, that's the thing. Back then, you didn't see as many gators. There's more gators there now. They took Jen. There's a section, I hope it's still there, where it's all kind of away from the parks that they maintain as natural habitat. And it's all wetlands, and there was always gators and turkeys and deer and probably piney wood rooters and all kinds of things out there. And she got to go out in that section or out by it, and that's where they saw the gators, which were on Disney property. And but you didn't see them so much in the park. I think people do see them now occasionally. in the waterways down there. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they haven't pulled a few out of the swimming pools. That happens. Now here's one of the ones that really gets me. And this was an example that I have that I found. Whoa! I lost Marcus. I thought something went quiet. Well, anyway, this is a Burmese python, and that's an example of how big one can get, and they actually can get bigger than that. These are the guys that get too big. So Joe and Sally, who thought it'd be really cool to have a snake for a pet, probably don't feel safe around it anymore, or at least don't want to keep feeding it. So they think it'd be a really good idea to take it out and turn it loose in the swamp. And they keep growing in the swamp, and they thrive in the swamp. And now they reproduce in the swamp. So we're starting to get a real problem with these guys being down there, and there's way too many of them. There are programs down there to encourage people to remove them. Hang on just a minute. This could be Mark. Oop, his electric just went out. So he may or may not make it back, guys. Oh my God, it's already after 12. Oh Lord, I need to close this down. I mean, that's anyway, this is the problem, and this list I have, which seems pretty current, is not completely, because this isn't the only snake now that's a problem down there. This Burmese python might be one of the biggest ones, but there have been anacondas, if I'm not mistaken, and I have heard rumors from people that were in my line of work that have told me they have found cobras down there in parts of Florida, and they are afraid they're reproducing as well, and they certainly could. It's the right climate. Ian says his wife dislikes teacher meetings, Carol, because most teachers don't listen very well. This tour was in the way back parts of the swamps of Disney, not anywhere near traditional guest areas. Yeah, that's back when I don't think people believed that, there was gators anywhere around there. Your husband watches the snake hunts, Tina. Yeah, I knew there were some of those on. Is that the swamp people, or do they actually just call it snake getting? Oh yeah, well, Tina, I was going to do that when Mark was here, because Mark has some really good skunk stories, but if he doesn't make it back, I may have to tell him myself. Not that it's going to help your problem, but I do want to talk about them. I tell you what, since I've been here a while, let me run through these. We've already seen these guys. This is another one down there that's beginning to be a problem. This is more isolated, but these certainly are down there. And this is a monitor species that's doesn't get huge, but these guys are 5 or 6 feet long. They stand up, they can run. Now, this is kind of the gator. If you guys remember the Rescue Down Under movie, Disney animated film with the Rescue Society or whatever they were called, and these guys eat eggs. And one of the threats of them is they dig up crocodile eggs and probably alligator eggs. Alligators really aren't much trouble in Florida anymore, or in this country, but crocodiles are. The United States only has one crocodile, and that's the saltwater. It is a salt crocodile. It lives along the coast of Florida, just in some few places. And the best place to see them usually is around the exhaust port of a power plant, because it's warm water, and they like to hang out in places like that. But these guys, if they continue to propagate, will be a problem with that. And another reason, again, not to turn things loose. That's probably true, Jennifer. I mean, most places like that have to. And, it's perfectly legal in Florida. There are a lot of gator trappers and hunters down there that do that now because they've become so intermixed with peoples. So, anyway, that's a big, I can't remember if this is called a Savannah monitor. I'm not sure which one this is exactly. There are bigger monitors than this, but that's one of them. Now we get to some little warm and cuddlies here. A lot of people, I spelled house wrong, big time. Hopuse. That's supposed to be house mouse or the Russian gray. This is a common house mouse, and believe it or not, that's an introduced species too. These came over on ships with the early colonists, people out of Europe. This was a common mouse in Europe. We used to refer to them as Russians, but it's basically the common house mouse. And this big guy over here is a Norway rat or a big brown rat. These guys get really big. These are the ones you see wandering the streets of New York on, TikTok or Instagram, or the guy, the rat carrying the pizza downstairs was one of these guys. Now, the United States has some native rat species, but they're not this big. The tails aren't as long. I would say they're a little prettier. These guys, there's nothing too handsome about these guys, really. Here's another one we have a problem with down here, and this is a European or wild boar. I have to put in a caveat here that these guys, a full-bred one of these is hard to come by these days. They have interbred a lot with feral hogs and not native pigs. There were no native pigs here, but the feral hogs, and back in the day when people used to let their hogs run loose in the summer to eat on natural nuts and stuff rather than feed them all summer, and they crossbred with those. So we've got sort of a semi wild boar or European boar, Russian boar here. But look at the little babies. I mean, aren't the babies cute? I'm gonna tell you something about this big guy over here. There's not much cute about him. I mean, you can't see him on that picture, but you might see the tips, but he's got big old tushes or tusk that can just rip a dog open from one end to the other, or somebody if he gets a hold of you. They tend to be pretty ill-tempered and not, not somebody you'd want to be in a small room with. So anyway, that's and we have a lot of problem with wild pigs here. Crossbreeds with the Russian feral hogs that run loose. They do a tremendous amount of damage. In the national park, for example, Great Smoky Mountain National Park has a problem with these guys. They destroy a lot of habitat for other creatures. They dig up a lot of native plants that are only in the Smokies. They're just and anywhere they are, they're very destructive. You can tell where a group of hogs has been in the woods because it looks like somebody rotor-tilled it. And if you've ever run a rotor-tiller, you know what I'm talking about. The ground's all disturbed and rolled over. They're a mess, and most places are working hard to eradicate them. And I don't know that we ever will. The wild boar literally came over as a game species. Rich people around the turn of the century brought them in to hunt, and they turned them loose in fenced-in areas near the Great Smoky. Well, actually, some were in the Smokies, and what is now the Smokies. And they got loose, some of them were just turned loose so they could chase them or hunt them. And now they're a huge nuisance. This is a nutrient. I don't know why I didn't name this slide. This guy looks like a cross between a beaver and a muskrat. He's big as a beaver, but he's got a tail more like a muskrat. He's got these big orange incisor teeth. That's common. That's a sign of a rodent. All rodents have those teeth. And these guys tend to be more bright orange. They're usually more of a yellow on smaller mice and rats and other critters, but on nutria, that's a distinctive marking. These guys were brought in for a couple different reasons, maybe some ways to eat vegetation, but they were brought in for their hides. They thought they'd be good for people like in Louisiana because they can live more southern. Well, beavers are down there too, but they could be skinned and the hides could be sold, but fur market's not what it used to be. But you can also eat them. My understanding is that they're on a lot of menus in Louisiana. Ian's been called a wild boar before. That's a different kind of boar. Hey, Laurie Jean Carlson. Welcome in. Good to see you. I hope I haven't missed anyone else. If you're new to the chat, hit that like button if you don't mind, or the unlike button. Shows you're here. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button or check us out. And if you want to hit the subscribe button, come on in and set that alert bell. I don't know how else to get messages out to people that I'm here. I don't know if my notifications ever show up on a list. They don't ever show up on mine, so I don't know if you guys see them or not. But anyway, that's a nutria. And they're from South America. A lot of people have seen these. Municipalities spend a lot of money on these guys. This is a rock dove, or just basically a pigeon. They're in cities all over the world, I guess, but they're here. But these are brought over from Europe also. And there's a couple of different varieties of them, but they're all basically the same. You see these guys all over the country. They are an imported exotic. They're even here out in the country. You see them mixed in flocks of native rock pigeons or rock doves, but they are pretty predominant in some places. And I don't know, they're more of a pest. Maybe they can, get in your attics. They can crap all over people and everybody else. So people spend a lot of money trying to clean up and control these guys. This is a monk parakeet, and these guys are in some sections of Florida now. They again were turned loose. They were pets. They got loose in Florida, found the climate to be to their liking, and some have stayed. I think there's some places in California where this is also a problem. I don't know if over there, I don't know if it's monk parakeets or a different variety. Sorry, guys, my hip's starting to hurt. And but they are in Florida, and they're also an exotic. The only redeeming feature I can even think of about these guys, and it's probably not going to happen, but there used to be a Carolina parakeet that was kind of like this. Maybe they could replace that guy, but I don't know. It'd still be a replacement. And here's one of my favorite birds to hate, and that's the starling. These were brought over because some guy from England or the UK missed the songbirds around his home in England, so he brought these guys with him, or had some brought over here, and from that they've turned into a plague upon our nation. I used to sit at night or in the evenings and watch thousands upon thousands of these guys fly over my house into a roost that they used for as long as I lived there, not far from where I did live, and just cloud the sky. I mean, I'm talking about a steady stream every night. And if you lived over by that place, the den they raise when they're just in roost making noise, chirping and singing or whatever they do, is really loud. And as I learned the hard way, in these roost sites, they just cover the ground in dung, starling guano if you want to, and it can get deep and it can cause all kinds of respiratory diseases. So you got to be careful with that. The flocks of these things are just huge. I used to know an old man that sat down by the road where I lived with a 12-gauge shotgun shooting at them all night long. Well, until it got dark. Trying to catch them as they flew over his house every night. There's a couple more that have come about. Well, not sure how the collared dove got here. Some of these are Eurasian, that part of the world. They've become, in just a very few years, they've become a high population has increased. There's a lot of them out there. They're as far, I'm pretty sure Mark said they've got them in Wyoming now. They tend to stay more in urban areas. I started seeing reports of them around here probably 15 years ago by birders I knew. And then it was kind of a new thing, but now they're just common. I mean, they're all over the place. The ringneck pheasant or the common pheasant, these guys were, and doves are hunted, so they probably are going to be trying to control collared doves by the number that can be harvested every year. The native doves are probably going to be a lower number. I would suspect. I don't know if anybody's doing that yet, but that's what I would expect to happen if they decide, they're going to be a nuisance or a problem. We'll see. Ringneck pheasants have been released here for generations. Mike, thanks for coming in, Mike. Have a good day, sir. Thanks for being here. To be fair, I'm not. Tina says Canadian geese. I dropped off some Canadian geese there one time. Thanks, Mike. We really appreciate that. Which ones are you talking about, Tina? To be fair, I'm not sure they were intentionally turned loose. I know several people who had their parakeet get loose. Oh, yeah, well, they might. I mean, I actually caught one time. It was flying loose outside, and I got it cornered in a building and caught it and brought it home. Jennifer should remember that one if she's still in here. Collared and ringneck. Yeah, you like that? That's kind of why I put those two together. You can see pheasants all over, especially. Yeah, they're out there, and they were all turned loose. I mean, none of those are native species here. We had all kinds of prairie chickens, prairie birds, prairie pheasants, prairie, quail and such as that. And these guys were brought in and what's the right word? Released by state game agencies for people to hunt because people like to hunt them. They tried to do it here and they weren't successful here. Tennessee just isn't the kind of state for ringneck pheasants, at least not in the east. They might could do it in the western part of the state where it's flat and they mostly big, huge agriculture. But they didn't work here. But out west, it's a big deal. I've been to the Wyoming Game and Fish bird farm with Mark years ago, and they raised these things by the thousands to turn loose in different areas of Wyoming every year, just so people can hunt them. And they're a big old bird. They jump up out of a cornfield or something, and they can cause you to soil your britches real quick if you're not ready for them. But they're out there. You going, Jen? Or are you just telling me you love me? I appreciate that. I just don't. If I miss something, tell me, because I'm trying to talk and read at the same time. And I lost my others. Oh, tomorrow for lunch. Oh yes, Mom told me about that. We'll see you then. What time? Should I be there or expect you to? I don't know. How are we doing that? You'll have to call me or something. Bird dogs, yes, they do point to them. When I was a kid, they came out. They had a program where you could apply through the 4-H to raise quail or pheasants and quail too, I believe, for that program to turn them loose. And I never got in on it, but I also think it's because it was not really big in my end of the state. And back then, I didn't know the difference between a ringneck pheasant and a crow, probably. So I didn't realize that they were imported exotic. See you in the above chat. See you tomorrow. Love you, Daddy. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out, Jen. Anyway, let me finish this because I'm holding you guys, probably keeping guys here, or some of you anyway, probably not many, but okay, here's a couple more. Another picture. I put space holder in here because I just put that guy. That's another starling on a feeder, but I didn't really, that's not important. The big thing here is the mute swan. Beautiful birds, but don't belong here either. There are places where they're trying to get these guys eradicated. Trumpeter swans, tundra swans, those are the native swans that we have. And these guys are very competitive with them for nest sites and food. They'll attack readily. And then I was hoping Mark would be here for this one, so I'll have to share this with him later. My last slide, another invasive that we love to hate is the English house sparrow or English sparrows. And these guys are so common today that most people probably think they are supposed to be here, but they're not. And I wanted Mark to see this picture because, he would probably say the only good English sparrow is a dead one. And he would probably agree with me that that's one good thing for cats to go kill is be English sparrows. If cats only kill starlings and English sparrows when they were allowed to run wild outside, and, I would probably be all for that. They're not that specific, unfortunately. So that's today's slideshow. And let me get back to my regular screen here. And I will start winding this down because I've been here way longer than I realized. Okay, they're invasive, and we have thousands of. Yeah, we do too, Tina. We don't have them as bad as some people. Mark has them by the droves, and he hates them. I work till 6 my time, so don't run no rush for me. He has them so bad that he actually puts some nets in his chicken houses. They would get in there and crap all over his chicken coops and all that when he's in. They've got chickens and they raise eggs, and they would get in there and he put up nets, and the nets catch starlings because they get in there too. But the darn English sparrows somehow avoid the net, so he ends up shooting at them with pellet guns. But I'd be willing to bet he's killed hundreds in his lifetime. But again, we'll never get rid of them. They're not going anywhere fast. Which reminded me of something else I was going to say along that line. Now I forgot. So we're not going to get to why. Oh, I'm so sorry, Tina. Yeah, we will. We'll talk about that right now. I don't know how you're going to get rid of it. Well, here's how you get rid of them. If you've got any dog food outside for your hounds, you're going to have to get rid of that or put it up at night. Or bird feeders, probably not so much. I've never seen a skunk eating bird seed. But they will get in garbage if you got outside garbage cans. Definitely any dog food. Oh, you don't? Okay. Then it could be that they're passing through. Do you know for sure that they don't live under your house or anything? Because that would be another possibility. Well, you'll have to let me put on some clothes. I mean, outside clothes, Miss Pruitt. I've actually, I tell you what, Tina, I can send you. Well, I don't know if that would help you or not. I've got a book about skunks and the problems they cause and how to get rid of them. I could probably copy that and send it to you, scan it and send it to you. That would mean you'd have to get rid of them. Mark Mark had a project or actually a job for a while. It's because they know your address. Brenda, you're not being helpful. We had that problem years ago, Tina, but we couldn't do anything about it. They were around our place because we were on a farm, and they were on the farm for all kinds of other reasons. Garbage is closed up inside too. I hope he was passing through. No, I don't think he lives there. I think our dogs were just in his way. Well, yeah, I mean, dogs are, when it comes to skunks and things like skunks and porcupines, dogs tend to be real stupid. And the thing is, most of the time they don't learn, so they go back for more every time it comes through. dogs that get stuck by porcupines will invariably grab the porcupine again next time he sees him. And, maybe they're mad at it and they want to get some revenge, but they really don't get revenge. They get nailed again. My experience has been most dogs that have been sprayed by a skunk once or twice get sprayed by a skunk, 3 or 4 times. They just don't seem to learn. And maybe like I said, maybe it makes them mad. So they go after them to get even, but they never get even. Okay, and before I forget, the flags on my back are because we're probably the greatest invasive species that's ever hit, North America in some ways. But so that's why I put the signs up. The Blarney bear was just because of my Irish background, Irish blood, whatever ancestry. And so I'm one of those immigrants. I'm one of those invasive species that lives here in the United States now. And I'd say it can be argued whether we're good or bad for the country as a whole. So anyway, that's why I put that up there. No way, dogs, stupid, especially hounds. I'm not even going to go there, Tina. You had a Newfoundland mix that got caught by a porcupine twice. Yeah, that's just it, Ian. I don't know hardly anybody that's ever told me they had a dog that got nailed by a porky that didn't happen at least twice. And, they just, so yeah, dogs are, I don't know if they're stupid. Maybe I should say that they let their desire to get even override the better part of their thinking. I've seen dogs that could avoid cars going down the street. I've seen cars that avoided other things, but yet they'll still grab a skunk and they'll still grab a porcupine. So you tell me what it is. I mean, it's not the brightest behavior, but then again, I've got a feeling it's some sort of, I don't even want to say defense, because I think they just get mad. I think every time they see one or smell one, they want to get revenge and they get it all over again. That's just my opinion. So anyway, anybody got any questions? I appreciate y'all hanging in there. Tina, I'm so glad. I mean, you came in, you stuck with me all day. Danny is stupid. Morgan maybe not, but Danny is the epitome of a hound dog. It probably is, Ian. I mean, a lot of dogs would have maybe not as a food source. There's a lot of wild critters out there that actually eat porcupine. They just know how to do it. They flip them over and eat them from the belly where there aren't any sticky parts. And there's probably something out there that eats skunks. Oh, well, actually, I know something that eats skunks. Owls. Owls eat skunks. Owls prey on skunks, actually. And they don't have any scent glands. So owls don't smell them. Owls can't smell them. They don't have an olfactory system like we do. And so they'll gladly pick up a skunk in the dark and chow down on it. I've seen owls that had that definite smell to them from time to time when I've been around some, but that's I don't know about hawks. Skunks tend to be more nocturnal when hawks aren't working, unless you live on a farm like we did where they were just out all the time. So that's interesting. I have to think about that some more. Yeah, it would be big or small skunks. I mean, they get out with I've seen baby young out following mama skunks around, little skunks. I mean, and they're kitten size or just a little bit bigger. They're plenty size to. There have been birds of prey known to pick up small dogs from time to time. I've seen red-winged hawks pick up a rabbit, a full-grown rabbit, so I know they could pick up a skunk. Size ones. I have seen skunks that were about the size of a Pekingese. You ever notice that they walk like a Pekingese pigeon-toed? I don't like Pekingese dogs much, so maybe that's why. But yeah, they're hard on them. There's other things. You have to, if you really watch nature, you'll find out there's other things. Skunk or owls are not liked by other predator birds, even not predators necessarily, but crows. Crows seem to hate owls, and I've always heard it's because owls pick their young up off the nest at night. That's why I was worried, because he was walking around at 10:30 in the morning. So we called him. It's probably not a bad idea, Tina, anyway. I mean, that's possible. They don't normally get out in the daytime. The farm we lived on years ago down towards Middle Tennessee, they were out just about. It wasn't. They were mostly out at night, and I mean, they were out. You had to watch them. You would kick one or step on one in the dark. Hey, Rhonda, glad you made it in. But they were out there during the day often. I think Brenda's told the story of going out, and she went skunk thumping with the farmhand and his wife, his big pickup truck, and they just ran over skunks. And of course, that sprayed the truck, and it was god awful smell. But they had so many. They were really a problem on that farm, and I don't know why. I mean, I don't know what made that farm different. It had to be something to do with how they stored their grain, or because they were really around the barns and the silos and stuff, but they were thick. I mean, every day you saw them, and they were out in the daytime, which does usually bother me too. But these didn't ever seem to be a problem. But we made sure we kept our dogs vaccinated. Brenda says, goodbye. Have a great rest of the weekend. Goodbye, Brenda. We'll talk in a few minutes. Hey, Rhonda, I popped in here popped in here and there since 10, but there were crawlies on the screen, so I couldn't stay. Oh, well, I'm sorry, Rhonda. I could have warned you to avert your eyes if I'd known, and you could have stayed, got in on the conversation. Which crawlies in particular were you not in favor of? Oh, Tina, don't make me feel bad. I did have a picture I meant to show you, Tina, that I thought you would appreciate. I found a picture of a black widow spider eating fire ants. So I thought if there was ever any chance that you might like a spider, I thought maybe that would be it. You don't like any crawlies, okay? I have a non-schedule this weekend, it seems. Oh, is that like a schedule that's not a schedule? Those drill bit lampreys are the only ones that got me. I don't like those things. I've never liked the looks of them. I still don't like the looks of them. I can't imagine getting one of them attached to your body. And they will go after a human in certain cases, but it's rare. I mean, it is rare. But can you imagine that? Well, Tina, I appreciate that. I like to do that. I guess in some ways I'd like to reach a bigger audience, but maybe in time it will. But I like to teach people about things they don't always understand. Not that I understand everything, but I can at least talk about it. Well, some of these things just, they all work with each other. When they work with each other, it doesn't bother us near as much. But then when they interact with us, that changes our whole attitude. I'm sure it will, Tina. I hope it will. No, I know what you're talking about now. I hope it will. We'll see. I'm sticking with it for the time being. Okay, guys, I need to see what Brenda's got scheduled here. Looks like she may be wanting me to go to the store with her or not. I'll see. I know I've got a buddy coming by sometime today. And so I need to be kind of prepared for him. And but everybody have a great rest of the weekend. And if you're off Monday, enjoy it. Take advantage of the day off. I know if you're Tina, I think you're probably off, maybe. I know everybody's not going to be off for Juneteenth Day, but I know some will be. I guess I would have been. now I'm off, but I'm retired, so it don't matter. Oh, she wants me to help pick up ice cream. Yeah, that's a good idea. I might want to do that anyway. That way I can get what I want. Anyway, I do appreciate it. Oh, you're retired. You're off. Okay. Thanks everybody for being here. If you got to stay all day, I really appreciate it. If you happen to be in the team replay, I appreciate that very much. Again, if you haven't already, hit that like button or dislike button. Subscribe to the stream, hit the notification bell so you know when we're going to be on, and just join us for whenever. We talk about all kinds of things on Saturday morning and enjoy good coffee. And sometimes on Thursday nights, we talk about a little bit more serious stuff. But, that's not an always, but, I welcome everybody that wants to come in and talk. We try to be open-minded and free speech and all that with respect to others. A lot of times on Saturday morning, I do have my good friend Mark Zorns helping me out, so that's always a pleasure. I know I enjoy him being here, and I'm pretty sure everybody else seems to. So he's a good guy. He's always been he's one of my best friends ever, no doubt about it. I know squirrels today. You know what? We didn't, Tina. That's a real good point. I mean, I barely chased the skunk, and I told you we'd do that. Okay. I said I was shutting down. It's 3 minutes till 1. I've been on for 3 hours talking. So, no, squirrels all aren't invasive here. They're native. Now, if they've taken gray squirrels to England, they're invasive over there. That's maybe the revenge we'll get back for them bringing those damn starlings over here and English sparrows. But squirrels will probably never be as big a nuisance as they are. I meant to tell you that one of the other reasons I hate starlings is they used to get up in our airplanes and nest. They'd build nests in an airplane in any little hole they could get into. And we always had to clean the stinky things out. So didn't like them for that either. Okay. Anyway, thank you. Love you guys. Always a pleasure. I enjoy this time immensely. I do apologize for the wiggling around. I do hurt in the chair some, but I want to be here or I wouldn't put up with it. So I appreciate that. And, if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, I'll be right back here again next Saturday morning. And I hope to see you all again. Oh, I will have fun shopping, Tina. I have no doubt. Bye-bye, everybody. Teddy, you want to say? Well, you know what? Teddy never made an appearance today, did he? Is Carol still here? Hang on. Come here. Say bye. Say bye. You got to say bye to everybody. Say, no, he don't want to say bye to nobody. I'll have to admit, I grabbed him in the middle of a dream. He didn't want that. Bye, everybody. Oh, wrong button.